welcome to another episode of Cultivate and Keep. I'm Corey.
And it's your favorite one, Jeremy.
Jeremy LaFon. Thanks for listening again. We're going to jump straight into it, but first, just wanted to remind you that we are in the midst of our 2-week challenge. So you can go to cultivateandkeep.com/challenge. We're giving away a bunch of stuff. It's not a random drawing. We're doing prizes for first, second, and third place. Help us spread the word about Cultivate and Keep, and we will reward you with sweet stuff like a brand new Kindle, a book of your choice, limited time run of Cultivate and Keep merch. And Cultivate
Get
and
your
Keep.
merch. Get your merch.
Get your merch, everyone. Actually, no, it won't be everyone. Just be, I think, first, second, and third place. But cultivateandkeep.com/challenge. All right.
Yeah.
That's
Ready to
it.
rock.
Ready to rock. Excited to see what you guys share.
Cool. Well, Corey, what's up for today?
Well, we wanted to talk about learning.
My favorite subject.
Your favorite subject?
Yeah. Well,
really?
besides lunch.
Oh, besides
it was lunch, PE, and then just overall learning was my next favorite.
Okay.
So last place.
Yeah, so basically, below all the other things. No, I think I'm glad that we're talking about this because learning is something that I think it's one of those things, it's like an acquired taste, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this has to do with like school or like
Age.
your upbringing, age. Well, I was going to say, I think that a lot of it has to do with, since we're like sort of forced to learn in school, then it like makes you have kind of
don't want to do it.
distaste in learning. When in reality, like you can't force someone to learn. Like it's literally like this mental thing that goes on inside of your brain, and there's no way that you could possibly force it. But
were you someone that like didn't want to learn, like, or growing up, did you like hate school? I don't feel like you. I didn't.
I don't know. I feel like I was pretty lukewarm.
Yeah.
I feel like I was really good at like just kind of regurgitating and memorizing and understanding, but never like learning. Like I would learn the things that I really wanted to, but then like I would just kind of memorize the rest and like get by.
But you didn't like push back and like not do homework assignments.
No, I was never a rebellious kind of student. I always had good grades and stuff, but
yeah, I was kind of the same.
But that's also, man, that's kind of interesting when we're talking about learning, because you can go to school and be a bad student but learn a ton or be really smart. So it's, I don't know, it's not really indicative of like learning is this totally separate process other than kind of academia, and obviously that helps, or if you're into it, but it's not for everyone. It's not their learning style, which I'm sure that we'll talk about a little bit. Yeah. So we're talking about learning.
Yeah. Well, why don't you read that quote, and then that kind of kicks us off.
Dude, I'm so glad. Dude, Charlie Munger.
Dude,
he's the OG.
Seeking wisdom, man.
Seeking
That's
wisdom.
the one.
Yep. Shout out to them. But okay, so Charlie Munger is Warren Buffett's business partner. Long time. He's kind of like in the shadows a little bit to Warren Buffett, but he's also a billionaire. So the guy is really smart, and he owns part of Berkshire Hathaway. He's very old now, but he's been like in the business world
80,
forever.
like super old?
I think so. Yeah, he's really old. Okay, but Charlie Munger actually is more well known for kind of like his like learning and like wisdom than Warren Buffett is. Warren Buffett's more like the logical kind of business decision maker.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Charlie Munger is more like the thinker and kind of like looks at all the different areas, the analyzer. So Charlie Munger says, I constantly see people rise in life who are not the smartest, sometimes not even the most diligent, but they are learning machines. They go to bed every night a little wiser than they were when they got up, and boy, does that help, particularly when you have a long run ahead of you.
Fire.
Dude, fire. Preach, Charlie.
That like sums up kind of exactly what we want to talk about tonight. Just the idea, or today I should say, talks about just the thought of really just desiring to learn, and every day being intentional about kind of what fills your mind and your ears, and kind of what noise are you going to choose to block out, and what are you going to choose to receive and take in. And I love how he talks about it kind of being like a race and like a long one.
Yeah.
And just, going to bed each day, waking up a little bit smarter. I mean, that's really what it's about. One thing my dad always says is, he says, if you read, let's say you read one book a year, which is, pretty low bar, but
That's like a page a day, basically.
Let's say you do that.
Yeah.
And let's say you just take one thing from every book you read, and he kind of talks about, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. I mean, and if you read, big picture books, that's 20 things you can just have under your belt that you can master.
Right.
And then he starts saying, what if you read, one book a month, and kind of do the math, right? But just the idea of like reading a book and then learning from it, or a podcast, or whatever it is, I like thinking about it as day by day and kind of, just little chunks at a time. And, you talked about high school earlier. I don't know, you think about like books and school and academic, and you don't want to do it. But now the things that I learn and read and absorb now, it's all stuff that I'm really interested in. And so it changes how much I want to learn. And I kind of like thinking through these notes, it makes you think, I wish I would have had my mindset now that I had when I was,
totally.
a freshman, right? But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it begs the question, everyone's going to learn things in life, like whether or not like they're trying to, like you're just going to every day maybe learn a little bit, or like over time you learn lessons. But like why pursue learning? Why make like a really like intentional effort to learn? And like Charlie Munger says, learn, be a little wiser than you were before, or go to bed a little wiser than you were. Yeah. I mean, why do that?
Well, so for me, I've been recently not studying, but just kind of wanting to learn about successful people or wealthy people, and try to figure out what makes them different from me and you, or just kind of your average Joe. Like, why are these guys or girls? Why do they stand apart? And I feel like a common thread I find is a desire to learn, and being disciplined, but like being disciplined in learning and studying. And if you read about these people or hear about them, most, big time people that are successful or wealthy, they don't waste a lot of time on, just random stuff or, random entertainment, but they're constantly learning. We'll get to him, but there's a guy, and we'll talk about it in our notes, forget his name off the top of my head, but he's a college basketball coach, and they call him the human Google.
Oh, yeah.
This guy, he reads like multiple books a day, like just crazy.
That's insane.
He's always reading. And so to answer your question, like why? Well, I mean, I want to grow daily, and I want to become a better version of me tomorrow. Every day be better. And I think a lot of that will be by what I learn and what I fill my mind with.
Yeah. I think it's important. Like there's the kind of old adage, like if you're not growing, you're dying. And learning is one of those things that has like a direct impact on how much you're growing every day. And I think like the kind of the disciplined pursuit of learning is basically just acknowledging that I don't know everything, or like that I'm lacking in some areas. And so to me, it's almost like a humbling experience, because to sit down in a book and say like, okay, I need to learn about this thing. Like I'm going to let the author teach me. It's putting yourself in a position to receive from someone else. And it's you saying, I don't have all the answers. I don't have it all figured out. Yeah. And I think if you get to a place where you don't want to learn, or if you are in a place where you don't want to learn, you're kind of saying like, I have it figured out, or I don't need anyone else's input. And in reality, like my vision and what I know is very short and limited. And therefore I need other people and other, people from history, people from other walks of life, people of other upbringings, people of other disciplines to teach me. And I can get a little bit of them to become a better version of me, like you said.
Two things I kind of want to say before we really jump into it. And this one's obvious, but I think when it comes to wanting to learn and just develop as a person, we have to be intentional. I forget the stat, but so we're filled with so much noise and entertainment and just, loudness in everyday life. There's some stat of like how many words per day we absorb. I forget what it is, but it's
like a ridiculous number though.
I think someone said recently, it was like, I think 200-300 years ago, the average person heard like 50,000 words a day. Now it's like well over like 750,000, like just crazy. I could be off, but something like that. Yeah. And so what I want to say first was we got to be intentional about we want to learn. And so recently for me, I feel like I've been almost wanting to learn too much, like just podcasts like all day long and on ×2 speed, and just like I'm like filling my head with all. It was good stuff, but the other day I was kind of thinking like, I wonder if I'm like, what am I taking away from these? Because there's so much, and so I think being intentional about what it is today that I want to learn and kind of nail that down, because there's two sides. There's a side of you're doing too much, or maybe you're not intentional. You're filled with entertainment, or because there's so much stuff we can do on our phone or just whatever. Like you want to kill 10 minutes going to the bathroom, or waiting in line, you just go on your phone. But what about reading a book or a podcast or doing something, or article, whatever it is to learn? So being intentional. And then the other thing that I want to look at my notes because I forgot. I've been realizing and kind of thinking, the older I get, the more I'm a firm believer in whatever. I feel that whatever you want to learn, you can learn. I mean, to an extent, obviously, but I mean, there's so much out there that we can just like skills we can develop and do by simply just trying it. And so those two facets of the second one being that we just have to really try. I think if there's something new skill you want to learn, whether it's on YouTube or a friend showing you, I mean, really anything you want, you can learn. And I think a lot of people kind of shy away from wanting to do new stuff or take up a new hobby, whatever it may be, because they don't know how. But I mean, think about how easy it is to just like learn, just literally try it. And so, yeah,
there's so many different mediums and avenues. And the other thing I was thinking about was how I think especially today when there's, like you said, when there's more noise than there ever has been, there's so many distractions like social media and all these kind of entertainment kind of like pacifiers that you have on your phone and your TV. Even like if you go to a restaurant, there's TVs playing, or if you're in the car, there's music or there's radio. Like there's literally things all the time. And you can either choose to make that time entertainment and kind of just like let the time go by, or you can learn to make that, or you can choose to make that time learning time to improve yourself and learn something new. And I think it's important too, like if all of your day is just spent being entertained, like you're probably going backwards. You know what I mean? Like you have to be intentional about learning, because otherwise your entire day is just going to be consumed with things that don't mean anything or didn't help you in any way.
So it kind of has me thinking, what do you do to manage that? Like you think of social media, fantasy basketball, which by the way, I think I'm losing this week to you, but
oh really?
I'm going to make
Dude,
a comeback.
I've been so
Don't
bad
worry,
recently.
bro. I'm going to come back.
Okay.
I'm
usually second half of the season or guy.
For me, like when I think about trying to manage the noise, my instinct is to cut it out. Like just, I'm not going to go on Facebook or Instagram, whatever it is, just stop it. But I don't think that's like a good solution. I think there's got to be a way to think of like screen time. You can now limit time. So you can put like 30 minutes and then your phone automatically will block you out of those apps.
Yeah.
But like, I'm curious for you, what is your method of managing the noise?
Yeah. Okay. Well, so that's interesting because so I've had like a week or two off of work recently.
And why is that, Corey?
Well, I got a new job.
Woo!
Yeah, it's cool. But anyways, so I've had some time off, and I've had plenty of time to be distracted and to be entertained. And I didn't want to let that happen. So I kind of finally sat down and like set up some parameters on my screen time on my phone, and I've been using it. So today I've only been on my phone for an hour and a half, which still seems like the most ridiculous amount of time. But some of that was like learning and stuff. But I found it interesting because what I've been doing is I've been limiting the amount of time that I spend on like, basically like the entertainment apps like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. In fact, I put Instagram and Facebook on like
the far page,
like the farthest page as possible, and like in random spots so I can like easily find them. But also what I found really interesting is that I set the limit really low. So I have like a 2-hour limit every day. And to be honest, it's not the best like system. Like you can't choose which apps specifically. And like if you leave Twitter open, for example, it'll like track, like even though you're not even on it. Yeah. But even though, so I'll go over the limit pretty much every day. And then when I go over the limit, the apps go dark on your phone. And when you click on them, the little thing comes up, like the screen time thing comes up. Then it asks you if you want to request, if you want to ask for more time.
You've exceeded your limit, yeah.
Yeah. And so then I have to go through kind of like the trouble of asking myself for more time. So I have to type in the passcode. I have to choose how much more time. And then it gives me like 15 minutes, an hour, or all day. And even just kind of the obstacle of having to put in my passcode and choose how much time I want more, it makes me like want to use it less. Mm-hmm. It makes it less tempting. So I think that the big thing for me is kind of like environment design. Like just build a habit. Like if I'm in the car, I'm listening to a podcast. I'm not listening to music.
That's a good point.
If I'm on a walk with my dog, I'm listening to a podcast. If I'm on my phone, I'm going to make it a little bit harder. Like I'm going to put my like iBooks and Kindle app in the front page and my social media apps on the last page. I'm going to put screen time on. So those are some of the like kind of simple things I've been doing, but I don't know if I have like the perfect answer. It's sort of like a running experiment for me right now.
Yeah. I think you said it right about selecting the environment. I think that's good. I also was kind of thinking as you were talking, I think it really boils down to kind of our mindset and our attitude. Yeah. Like if all we care for is entertainment, then that's kind of what we're going to get. But when we decide and kind of set priorities to learn and grow, stuff like that, doing the screen time and sticking to it becomes easier,
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see here. Okay, so the guy's name that I was referring to is Coach George Raveling. So this guy, like I said, they referred him as the human Google. And he... Why are you laughing?
I couldn't imagine being called a human Google.
If you want, you can call me that.
Would I be proud of that? I don't know. It's kind of I don't know.
I was listening to a podcast about this guy, and they were interviewing him, and I don't know all the details, but kind of what they were saying was this guy is like a crazy learner, and he was talking about, they did like a whole 20-minute segment on his method for reading books. Like he's just all in.
Okay.
It was super interesting. You should go listen to it. You probably like it.
Okay.
But so this guy, I think he reads, I think I said 4 books a day, something crazy like that.
How do you even?
It's nuts, dude. But it's super interesting to hear his methods. And basically what he talked about was he doesn't read a whole book like front to back. And so for me, I struggle with that. Like I want to be someone that can skip around, but it's so hard for me to like, I don't know. If I say I'm going to read a book, I've read it from front to back, but I think that's like a wrong way of doing it, because the truth is most books are intended to communicate an idea or a topic or something they're trying to focus on. And so they do that with chapters. So it's going to be, let's say 12 chapters on a certain topic. Let's say it's integrity. Not every chapter may apply to you like it would to me. And so George talks about every book, you skim through it and you figure out which chapters you're going to read, and then you basically skip the rest or skim them like very lightly. Yeah. And super cool. Like I love his way of talking about it.
Yeah, I love that. I think I was listening to another podcast recently, and he was talking about a similar kind of method for reading. He says that the system that he uses every time is he'll read the intro, and then he'll read the last chapter. He won't read the first chapter yet, and then he'll read he'll like really study the table of contents, and then he'll basically like select which chapters he's interested in, and then he'll go like he'll just skip to those chapters. If they don't interest him, like don't even bother. And then like once he finds one, he'll read through all the chapters that are interesting, and then he might go to another chapter that like maybe he's not sure about. If it's not interesting, throw it away, and then he's done with the book. Like that's it. Like, and so he said most of the time he'll read like, oh, this was a Naval from he created a website and a company called AngelList, where like startups can like get venture capital and find investors and stuff. He's a super smart guy, but he said that normally he'll only read like 20 to 30% of a book. But he said in the intro and the last chapter is usually kind of all the main subjects and topics and main points summed up pretty well. And then just go to the chapters that are most interesting to you, because he said he would find over and over again, like he was just reading or skimming through stuff that wasn't that interesting anyway. So like why put yourself through stuff that isn't actually like that you're not actually learning from? Like just skip to the stuff that you actually are learning from.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. And he said it's relieving. Like he's like, one book, like I'll read 20% of it. It was, $15. That's a great investment. You know what I mean? Like it makes him not feel so obligated to like finish the book, or he still read the book because he got the main concept out of it.
So I'm gonna read a quote. Okay.
Go ahead.
Step out of my bubble.
You can do it.
Okay. So George says, he said, every day presents an invaluable opportunity to control our attitude, behavior, and performance while becoming 1% better physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. The art of leadership is about having the awareness to focus your time and energy on what you do not know and what you need to know, while getting extraordinary results from the skills you already have. So it kind of like the quote we start off with, the idea of, I gotta stop saying that, but the thought of daily becoming a little bit better. And I think of it like, think of like moving like inches, think of like a snail, like a worm. They move really slowly. But that's kind of what my mind thinks about. Every day you're becoming just a little bit better. You're learning a little bit more. And I don't know, that's good. Yeah.
Well, I think along similar lines, Warren Buffett, so Charlie Munger's business partner, also a voracious reader and learner, he said read. Oh, so he was asked like, how do you get smarter, Warren Buffett? And then he said that like the old story goes that he held up like a huge stack of papers, and he was like, read 500 pages like this every week. That's how knowledge builds up, like compound interest. So like you're saying, if you're 1% better, or you learn 1% more every day, it may not seem like much at the time. Like, okay, you read a chapter today, or you read a couple blog posts, or you listened to a podcast. But over time, those ideas kind of all form together. Connections are made in your mind. The habit builds. Your mind is more receptive. It's better able to learn from the things you're trying to grasp. And then over time, it compounds, just like interest would in the bank, for example, or just like in a stock investment.
That's a good point. I think it was Jocko. He was talking about like reading books is kind of like a grid layout, how over time they all begin to connect and intertwine, and all these ideas kind of bounce off another. Yeah. And that's a cool way of thinking about it.
Yeah, it's not so linear as we think of like, I need to read this first and then that. And another thing I was thinking about was, this kind of popped in my head, but it was an idea of just-in-time learning. So you have like the old kind of just-in-time inventory, or like I think it's just-in-time management, whatever it is, where you're creating inventory just in time for the next shipment that you're selling. And the same way, learn things that are super applicable to you right now, because that's what you'll learn the most from at that time. If you're learning like about, I don't know, how to like treat your grandkids, like you're going to absorb some of it, but you're going to learn a lot from it when you're 60, when you first have grandkids. So just-in-time learning is kind of like whatever the next challenges that you're facing, whatever the next thing is you want to learn about, whatever next venture you want to take on, learn about that, and then just take everything as it goes. Find a book for it, find a podcast about it, and then that'll really allow you to kind of go 1% at a time every day.
Yeah. To follow up on that quote, kind of at the end of it in that podcast, the guy George, he said, identify an attitude or behavior in your life that you want to improve. And he said, focus on improving it just 1% every day. Yeah. And I was like, man, like that's so cool. And that's kind of what sparked this topic of just wanting to learn. And I think in the beginning we talked about, when we think of learning, it's kind of has like a negative like appearance to it. We think, at least when you're younger, you think of like books, school, learning. Right. Now, for me, and I believe you as well, learning is exciting.
It's cool. The most exciting thing to me.
Yeah, for me, it's like daily. What can I learn today?
Crave it.
Yeah, so it's cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. I wanted to bring up, I was actually coincidentally reading about this, and I totally forgot that we were kind of talking about this, but I was reading through another great podcast and blog called Farnham Street. Farnham Street, yeah. I'm not sure what the name is behind it or why, but
I'm gonna look him up.
But he talks about this technique that he learned from a guy named Feynman. I hope I'm not butchering his name, but it's Feynman. So it's the Feynman technique. And he talks about how there are two types of knowledge and essentially learning. And most of us focus on one and we don't do the other. So he says the first type of knowledge focuses on knowing the name of something. And the second focuses on actually knowing something. And they're not the same thing. So again, this kind of brings me back to like the traditional academic type of learning where you're learning the name of something, or you're able to memorize it, you're able to recall it, but that's not really knowing like just because I know the dates of World War II, which actually I probably don't, doesn't mean that I know what happened in World War II or why it was important or how it started, how it ended. So they're very two different things. So he says to actually learn, you have to be able to break it down into super simple concepts. So he kind of bargains that if you're not able to explain it to a toddler, you don't actually know it. And so, and he talks about this quote from this other guy named Warner, where he says, the person who says he knows what he thinks, but cannot express it, usually does not know what he thinks. Right. So many people know about things, or they know the name of things, but they don't actually know it. So, and I love it because it's so simple. He says, step one to learning, choose a concept. So this is kind of like, just in time, or like whatever is interesting to you, pick something. 2, teach it to a toddler. So this isn't like actually go find a toddler to teach it to, but like write it down, whatever kind of style you want to do, explain it to a toddler, break it down into like the very basic kind of components of whatever you're learning about, and then make it easy enough for a toddler to understand. So in like first grade kind of language. Step 3, identify the gaps and then go back, to source material or improve it. So you can bounce it off someone, or you can look at it again to see if there's any kind of gaps. And then number 4 is just a review and simplify, and it's kind of optional. But the whole kind of concept of the Feynman technique is whatever you're learning, people think that learning is about being able to understand the complexities of something, but but really learning is about being able to break it down into its most simplest terms. And I love that.
Yeah, it's good. It's cool. So the podcast is called what?
So it's the blog and the company is Farnham Street.
Farnham.
But the podcast is called The Knowledge Project.
Okay.
He made it a little confusing, but
now you said the reading says Fainham.
Yeah.
Or Fainham.
Feynman.
Feynman. Okay.
We're butchering it.
But
Feynman. Yeah.
And that's the same podcast?
No. He was talking about
Okay, because it's different. Okay. I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
So it was the famous Nobel-winning physicist Richard Feynman.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what it's about.
No, that's neat.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, I was also reading from the Farnham Street blog how Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, they both said that they spend 80% of their work time reading and learning. And I was like, 80? So, okay, let's just say.
So much.
If you have,
that's 4 to 5 days.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, a couple of ways to express that. Monday through Thursday is reading and learning. Friday is like, quote, working. Or like in your day, that's, 9 a.m. until like 3 p.m. is learning. And then 3 to 5 is actually working. Like, what would my world be like, or what would my work be like if I spent 80% of my time learning? Now, granted, they're investors, and they really don't have that much to like manage or delegate or things. It's all kind of figured out for them. Yeah. And they're very like, they have to make these huge decisions. But still, like, even if you spent 20% of your time or 10% or even 5% of your time out of the day to learn, that is like a world's difference. And that's huge.
80%. That is so much time.
Yeah.
I'm like stoked if I spend an hour of my day.
Right.
Like,
or even like half an hour.
Wow.
If I can like squeeze in a couple blog posts, I'm good to, or like even like a podcast, I'm like good to go. But yeah. One more thought I had was, this is a quote from, I forgot where it was. I forgot to source it, but he says, and again, it kind of sucks that I don't have the source of it, but he says, I find for myself that my first thought is never my best thought. My first thought is always someone else's. It's something that I've already heard about the subject, always the conventional wisdom. It's only by concentrating, sticking to the question, being patient, letting all the parts of my mind come into play that I arrive at an original idea. And I think that's important for learning because, again, you may know about something, or you may know the name of something, but you have to sit down and really think through something to learn it and to understand it.
Well, I like the subpoint of that. It says learning how to learn and think.
Yeah.
Which is weird to think of. It's like taking a step backwards.
Right.
But I think it's good. So recently I've been thinking, what can I do to organize what I've learned and then to retain it?
Yeah.
I said earlier about just almost taking in too much information.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I'm trying to figure out what are my systems for when I read a book or hear a podcast. What do I do to actually take away from that? And so what I've been doing is every book I read, at the end of it, I'll like just basically write in like my overall thoughts of it. And I think what I would like to do is probably get like a Google Doc or some kind of electronic copy, and basically every book or podcast I read, just jot down a few notes. I think it'd be cool to have like a compiled list of just all my general thoughts from everything I've touched on that for that year. And we talked about earlier doing like a year in review, and that would be a quick way to reference, what did I really learn and take away from this year, from like an academic standpoint.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out like a good system to retain what I've learned. The idea of learning, how do you learn? How do you think?
Right.
I think it's a question we should all really kind of ponder and think about.
Yeah. It's interesting too. I saw today, kind of discovered this product called Readwise, and basically it connects to your Kindle or to I think to Evernote too, like if you like take notes in Evernote on a book or something, but basically it kind of compiles all of your notes on a book together, and then it will email like what you like, just different little segments of what you learned from a book, like every day, or like you can set the cadence or something. So like every day you're kind of being reminded of like what you learned from that book, and there's over time like
it takes random segments.
Yeah, so like if I just highlighted a part in a Kindle. And
okay, so whatever you highlight, underline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like maybe like
sick.
I selected it and like made a little note like, oh, this would be good for this business, or like try this thing. And then it just like sends it to you. It's like, oh wow, that's a really cool way to kind of like retain it. And, like
Readwise.
Readwise. Yeah.
I think I heard of that, or I saw that on Shark Tank. I'm almost.
Oh really?
I feel like I did.
Maybe.
Kevin O'Leary just shot it down.
It's like learning this for chumps.
Cool. Is that it? Any other points you have?
I think that's good.
Cool.
Learn how to learn and then go learn.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay.
Cool.
Well, go to cultivateandkeep.com/challenge.
I challenge you
I challenge you
to go to.
Listen, it's a challenge for us to do all these blog posts and podcast episodes. It's a challenge for you to share and get the word out about Cultivate and Keep. So win-win.
Win-win.
All right.
All right,
See
guys.
you in the
Peace
next
and
one.
love.